serving all of us now, taking care of our futures and our bank account so we can all retire one day and live happily ever after, probably on a beach somewhere where there's too much traffic and you wait in line 3 hours just to try to enjoy the sand with your kids. But that's for another day. 864-862-2161 is his phone number. 864-862-2161. If you'd like Monte Lee's phone number, his phone number, no, I'm just kidding, Coach.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Coach, sounded good.
Yeah, yeah, so go ahead and give it, Jamie. I mean, look, I love answering questions about, situational hitting and defense. So if anybody wants to call me, would love to have a conversation about it.
While you're in the dugout?
Yeah,
I know.
sure. Why not?
Yeah. Two-strike approach. I hear you.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, hit me with it.
So, dude, I just got some breaking news here, and this is a question for all of you. You're going to be thrilled that we invited you on the program today because we're really hitting you with the good stuff here. The headline is Dr. Pepper surpasses Pepsi as the second most popular soda brand. How the hell did it take that long? Pepsi sucks. Does anybody really drink
Dr.
Pepsi?
Pepper? Dr. Pepper is basically Pepsi and root beer combined.
Oh, it's basically what it is. Yeah,
secret stout, right? Yeah, that's what those 20 flavors are.
I have all kind of useless information at my disposal.
Did you look that up on your Wi-Fi?
I did. No, it's all right here. These are the kind of discussions that we have in the dugout.
That's right.
Right.
Oh man, I was telling some stories about playing for Johnny Cribb the other day, and I'll never forget. John, coaches hear everything. They act like they don't, but they do. And I'll never forget when he ran me and Russell Robinson till our legs were going to fall off because we were talking about girlfriends and not baseball. And so yeah, I'm glad you're not doing that when they're talking about Wi-Fi and Dr. Pepper. Pretty wild last 24 hours or so. And of course, so yesterday, I guess you're, as the interim head coach, you had to go through exit meetings with the entire team, right? So You've been busy.
Been very busy. Yeah. I mean, today was a tough day. I think anytime a head coach is let go, that's an emotional day for everybody involved, for the coaching staff and for the players. It's a very challenging day. But I was, given the responsibility of being the interim head coach, through this process. And one of the things that you have to do as a head coach is you have to do exit meetings with all the players just to get an understanding of, number one, where are the players going for summer ball? What are their focus is going to be over the summer? I think we all know with the transfer portal being what it is, just the status of the player. Does the player, is the player planning on coming back, or is the player, planning on going into the transfer portal? Going over, kind of where you see them as a head coach for next year's team. What are the things that they need to improve upon throughout the summer, whether it's in summer ball or in the weight room or the batting cages or whatever the case may be. So you just kind of go over anything and everything with the player just to make sure that you're both on the same page once you close the chapter of this season and they move into their summers and then, look into the future.
Of course, as you're looking into the future there, or as the season ended, is there anything you do, Monte, that you can, try to mitigate the uncertainty surrounding the entire program when the head coach gets removed like that? Or, is there, what do you tell the players in that situation?
Well, I think, again, like I have a responsibility as the interim head coach to try to keep the roster intact. I mean, that's my biggest priority. And I feel like I did after going through that yesterday, there was a lot of positives in regards to being able to do that. So that was my first priority. And really just trying to make sure that they understand that they're going to be okay, that life is going to go on, and that they are in a really good program, in a really good situation at South Carolina, playing in the best league in the country, in front of the greatest fan base in college baseball. There's so many things that they, even though it was an incredibly tough day, there's so many things that they need to look at and be grateful for in terms of what they have here. So it really was just trying to be as positive as I can and trying to do everything that I could to hold, just to encourage the guys to stay together and hold the roster together. That was my main priority as far as yesterday.
All right, Monty. So now that the season's concluded at 37-25, we'll go back and we'll look at a lot of the things that happened this year, players and stats and stuff like that. But we just have to start with the dude, man. We got to start with Cole. And a little programming note, everybody. Cole Messina will be on our program next week. As a matter of fact, he is, I think he's fishing right now. So, but I know he'd rather be playing baseball. He did hit 326 this year to lead the club. Monty, 71 ribbies, 21 home runs. He also stole 8 bases, which isn't too shabby for a catcher. And he was just phenomenal behind the plate and how he handled the staff. And I started thinking about this and going back to, I probably should have gone back before when you were at Spartanburg Methodist too, because there were some dudes who could swing it up there. But for all the hitters you have coached in your tenure, and I was thinking about it, I was like, Jerome Peters, Drew Meyer, Landon Powell, Busher, Pierce, Michael Campbell, Smokey, Havens, Darnell, Disher, all the guys at the college, Matt Leeds and Aldrich and Marty Gant, Carl Wise, Oakey and Seth Beer and Wagner and Grice and all those guys at Clemson. And then you get this cat for 2 years. There's just been unreal. When you compare him as a hitter, and you've worked with every one of these guys and made them all better, when you compare him as a hitter, especially as a catcher, right? How do you do that? Where do you put him in your mind with what he's been able to achieve in the last couple of seasons?
Oh man, it's really hard to kind of rank guys like that, and kind of compare them because they're elite. They're the elite of the elite. Like I would say this, like the SEC is an alpha male league. That's what it is. It's an alpha male league, and Cole Messina is like one of the 5 biggest alpha males in this league. When you start looking at the hitters that are in this league, there are some absolute dudes. You got Condon, you got Christian Moore, you got Caglianone, you've got Montgomery, and you've got Messina. And there's some guys that are in that group that those guys are big leaguers. They are big leaguers. Those guys could go into AA, AAA baseball right now, maybe even in the big leagues and compete. I think Cole Messina is. He does everything, and he does everything really well. Defensively, he's a plus defensive catcher. Just looking at like the metrics over the course of the season, like he steals more strikes. At one point this season, Cole Messina stole more strikes that were balls than any college catcher in the country.
Wow.
So like he's a plus defensive catcher, obviously, and you saw it even at the end of the year, teams that can run, when they try to run, Cole Messina shuts down the running game because he can really throw. Offensively, like you look at his plate discipline, a 465 on base percentage, hits for power, hits for average, can drive in runs. The guy's also a plus defensive first baseman. The guy could go play left field or right field at a high level. He's a tremendous athlete. That's the thing that you see, this big old physical burly man, that hits home runs. And one thing that I think is the most underappreciated part of his game is how athletic he is, because he can really run too. This guy has defensive versatility. He has speed. He can really defend. He can hit for power. There's really not a tool that he does not have. And he's doing that, from the toughest position physically on the body and mentally. This guy's got to check in on both sides of the ball. Unlike any other position on the field. So, I think he's going to be a very high draft pick. And I think the guy's going to wind up playing in the big leagues for a long time, just because of the skill set that he has and being able to do it at this level. Nothing prepares you for the next level better than playing in the SEC. And he's going to be a phenomenal player for whoever drafts him. And I'm super excited for Cole.
Coach, you mentioned the alpha male aspect of Cole Messina. In your opinion, you've been back in South Carolina for 2 years. You coached against them at Clemson. You were aware of the Tanner era, which the roster was littered with those types of guys. And this is not coming down on any player right now as a program has enough of those guys, or is there never, can you never not have enough?
Look, let's just be accountable for what we need to be accountable for. I think we all know, we need more alpha males. That's the bottom line. We need to be able to recruit at the level. When you look at, the Tennessees and the Texas A&Ms, when you look at those teams, those teams have dudes. Laviolette and Montgomery, and you go, Christian Moore and Burke and Billy Amick. That's the first 3 hitters you got to deal with in Tennessee's lineup. Those guys are alpha males. They're dudes. So, we have to be able to put ourselves in a position to get those players. It's really that simple. We all think we're really good coaches. Hey, this is a players league. It's about having dudes that can play. It's really that simple. And that's what it boils down to. You've got to recruit the best players in the country because this is the best league in the country. And if you're going to beat, the Tennessees and the A&Ms and the Arkansas, if you're going to compete with those teams and those programs, like you have to have dudes.
All right. So I got an interesting question for you. I did some numbers this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to throw this at you because it's the game, and I'm going to allow you to explain it all. I'm an idiot. I can't explain any of this stuff. But the game has certainly changed as strikeouts are up across baseball at every level.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly felt like at times this year, South Carolina had their issues with runners on base, runners in scoring position.
Right.
With all of that said, Coach, the Gamecocks in the last 2 years have scored 952 runs in the last 2 seasons combined. That is the most of a combined 2-season total since the 2009-2010 teams. And that 2010 team, of course, won the national championship. So when you throw in, the frustrating moments of not being able maybe to have some success with runners on or runners in scoring position and the strikeouts and all these things that are generally negative in baseball, but then you look and you go, well, we're scoring a pile of runs. Like, how has the game changed and how has that changed how you coach your team? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, and it's a good question. It's a pretty broad question, so I'm going to try to answer it to the best of my ability where everybody can understand where I'm coming from. So when I came to South Carolina and I looked at our roster and I looked at our offense, I said to myself, how can we maximize the run production of this group of players? Because that's ultimately what it's about, right? And we had guys that had power, but we also had guys that had swing and miss. That struck out some. Like even our best players struck out a decent amount. So I looked at our guys and said, okay, how can we maximize what we can do offensively with this group of players? Because when you look at players that hit home runs or hit for power, but also strike out some, you're not going to cut down on the strikeouts very much. It's very, very tough to do that. And I would encourage anybody, ask high-level baseball people, it's very hard to get guys that swing and miss to stop swinging and missing. Okay. So what I did was we developed a plan to try to get on base as much as possible so that we could allow our power to show up, because it's one thing to hit solo home runs. Solo home runs don't necessarily beat you, but what beats you in baseball is big innings. If you score 3 runs in 1 inning, your chances of winning that game go up north about 80%. So like our plan was to try to put ourselves in a position to score as many runs as we could based on the types of players that we have. We hit 118 home runs last year. We finished in the top 5 in the country in walks. We finished in the top 5 in the country in walks this year and hit north of 100 home runs again. We averaged north of 7 runs in both of those seasons. So when you look at it, like what is offense? Offense is about scoring runs. When they look at football teams and they look at offense, they don't care what type of offense they run. They just care about how many points they put on the board, right? And that's what offense is. So what we have to do, and I 100% believe that we need to be a better situational hitting team. We also need to be better when it comes to moving the baseball with 2 strikes. We have to recruit those types of players. We have to recruit guys. When you look at our roster, how many guys did we have that could play multiple positions and had that type of skill set? We have to recruit the types of players, like just a couple guys we brought in out of the portal. Blake Jackson, Austin Brenling. Okay, those were 2 guys that we brought in out of the transfer portal that we injected into that lineup. What types of players were those guys? Okay, those guys were more bat the ball, get on base, move the baseball oriented players because I felt like we needed that. Right? We have to look at what types of players we want to bring into the program and then maximize what we can do offensively with them based on their skill set. We also were in the top 3 in the league, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have like the updated SEC stats. We also ran a lot more this year than people realize. Like we stole 66 bases this year, and we were second, I believe, or third in the league and sacrificed bunts.
Yeah. Saw that.
So like a lot of people think, well, you just try to play for the home run. No, we didn't necessarily try to play for the home run. We bunted a lot more than we have in the past. We ran a lot more than we have in the past too, but we still don't have enough guys that can do multiple things. More Swiss Army knife oriented type players that can do that. You got to hit for power. Like you can't have a lineup that doesn't hit for power in a power arm, power bat league. But you want to have those pieces around those power bats that can get on base via the bunt, that can steal bases, that can move the baseball with 2 strikes. We've got to get better when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position. But those are things too that, we have to continue to look at and develop and work on a more regular basis. We were pretty good at hitting with runners in scoring position last year. We didn't do necessarily anything different this year. We just weren't as good at it. So that's on me as the offensive coach. Like I got to do a better job of looking into that and figuring out, okay, what are some things that we can do differently to put ourselves in a position to be more successful there. But you're right. Like in the postseason, look, the teams that tend to win in the postseason, what do? They keep you from scoring because they have excellent pitching. They play excellent defense. They minimize the free 90. And on offense, when you get those opportunities against great pitching staffs that you face in the postseason, runner at third with 1 out, you got to have players in that program that can move the baseball and get that runner in. And that got us. There's no doubt about it. We had too many strikeouts with runners at third and less than 2 outs. We weren't good enough in those spots. But you have to recruit to that, and you have to continue to work on those things if you want to be that style of offense.
Monte Lee, interim head coach at the University of South Carolina. All right, so let me ask you this. I was watching the LSU game last night. Did you watch that LSU North Carolina game?
I watched some of it, but I was also on we do realize that the transfer portal opened yesterday.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you haven't. So what you're telling me is you haven't slept.
I didn't watch television. I can tell you that.
All right. Well, I was watching the game, and in that game last night, Tommy White's leading off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'll be damned, because going back, Cole let off a couple of times this year, coach, and we've seen this a little more. Condon, hitting in the 2-hole for Georgia and things like that. So what's going on? What are the analytics behind that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So look at it this way. So like there's a traditional mindset of how you build a lineup, and then there's more of a new school analytical way of building a lineup, a sabermetric way of building a lineup. Well, just look at it like this. So let's say, for instance, like Charlie Condon, okay, as an example, and then I'll get to White in a minute. If you take Charlie Condon over the course of, let's say, a 65-game season in college baseball, okay, in 65 games, if he hits in the 3-hole or the 4-hole, how many more at-bats would he have gotten over the course of that season if he hit in the 2-hole? So that's the way that you have to look at this thing. Like when you start seeing these guys that are power-oriented guys hitting into one spot, I'm just assuming LSU may say to themselves, like, based on our lineup and the type of players that we have, like, let's put him up there where he gets 5 at-bats every single game. Like Charlie Condon, he's going to get 5 at-bats every single game. You don't want to be going into the top of the 9th inning on the road and Charlie Condon sitting in the on-deck circle because he's hitting in the 3-hole or the 4-hole and he wasn't hitting in the 2-hole. So I think that's a big part of it too. And then when it comes to like RBI situations, the 3-hole, when you look at the numbers, sometimes comes up with runners on base less. If you're in the first inning of a game and the 4-hole hitter comes up, guess what? The 4-hole hitter can't come up in the first inning unless there's somebody on base. So that's why the 4-hole hitter tends to generate more RBI opportunities than any other spot in the lineup. And, so you have to kind of look at your lineup from that perspective of like, how do you want to construct your lineup based on the pieces that you have? So you're seeing more and more teams hit their dudes in that 1 or 2 spot just because they're simply just trying to get them up there at least 5 times a game to give them a chance to win the game, at the end of the game.
All right. So then that brings me to this one. All these years you've coached, is it better to kind of give a guy or get him comfortable in a spot as opposed to moving dudes around in the lineup? Because I remember me as a hitter, Monty. If I'm your 7-hole guy, I'm fine with being the 7-hole guy. I just want to be in the 7-hole. If you're a 2-hole guy, whatever it is, I always felt like personally, And we know guys like this, like Smoke, he hated to be moved around, like just put me there and leave me there. But you see this I'm not just saying this happens in South Carolina. I'm just saying you're seeing it all over the place. Jay Johnson does it a lot at LSU, where your guys are, they're hitting in the 5-hole one day and then they're hitting in the 3-hole the next day. And this dude's hitting here, and Casas ended up hitting in the 9-hole this year. How do you manage that as a coach, as a head coach, as a hitting coach, whatever it is, and trying to get guys comfortable? And then on top of that, hopefully I'm not talking too much here, when you've got a guy comfortable in this spot, like the 6 or the 7-hole, and you got a guy struggling in the 2-hole, general thinking is, all right, we can flip-flop these guys and let's make the top of the lineup stronger. But sometimes that just compounds the problem. So how do you work through those things?
Well, there's a couple different ways you can construct a lineup and thought processes on that. And I'll try to go through the different philosophies that I've used over the years and things that I've seen that I feel like work. And number one, the most traditional model that you can go with is you can put the pieces that you have based on what you value in each one of those spots in the lineup. So like a 1-hole guy, you want it to be a guy, if you're the type of coach that I want speed up there, I want high on base percentage, I want a guy that can bunt, I want a guy that can run, you just take the best player that fits that profile and put him in that spot. A 2-hole guy is going to be a guy that, is extra base hits, but he can run. He has some athleticism. He's a dynamic player. Put your best piece there. Your 3-hole guy, a lot of teams think is your best hitter. Your 4-hole guy is like one of your 2 to 3 best hitters, but also has some power and can drive in runs. So like you can construct your lineup based on like the skill set of the player and then leave them there as long as you have really good hitters that can fulfill that role. And that's where, like, when you look at Tennessee's lineup, so to speak, they didn't juggle their lineup a ton as far as 1 through 5 because they had dudes that fit those profiles of 1 through 5 in that order. Okay. So I think it depends on your personnel. One of the things that we did that really worked for us when we scored a lot of runs kind of at the back end of the year. We started staggering our lineup left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, all the way down to create really tough matchups for the starting pitcher. So like, for instance, if I'm a lefty and I'm on the mound and I've got 3 left-handed hitters in a row, well, I can just throw fastballs and breaking balls to those guys. Are probably not going to hit them very well. And then when I go to the bullpen, if you got 3 righties in a row, you just bring in the righty with a slider and it's see you later to those right-handed hitters. When you staggered a lineup some, kind of like we did, we created a tougher matchup out of the bullpen. You're not as likely to bring that lefty in or bring that righty in and leave him in there as long, and it gives the pitcher different looks. So there's different ways to do it. I think moving the lineup around a lot is challenging. I think it can be challenging. It's not my MO when I've constructed lineups to do that a lot, because I think you need to send a message to the player that I'm going to stick with you and that I'm going to ride with you here because I believe in you in this spot and what you do and what you bring to the table. So I tend to look at the player as this, he fits the profile of the player that I want in that spot, and I roll with him there. And then I only bump them down if I feel like they're beginning to lose a little bit confidence, maybe putting too much pressure on themselves in a spot like a 3-hole guy, 4-hole guy. Bump him down to the 5-hole maybe and take some of that pressure off of him. Sometimes he'll start hitting. But I've always been more with sticking with guys and putting them where their skill set fits a little bit more than bumping guys all over the lineup. I just think that, again, the consistency, I think the message you send as a coach is probably more consistent, is more important to the consistency of the player than anything.
I couldn't agree more with that. Are you okay on time, or are we? You tell me.
I'm good. Yeah, no,
okay.
I'm good.
I don't want to interrupt lunch, or if you never know what's going on. Right? You got the dogs at the office today, or you?
No. We have to be professional around here, Jamie. The dogs don't come over here until after working hours. That's it. So they come over later in the day. I throw on some old clothes, walk around the stadium with my headset on, making calls, and I let the dogs chase the squirrels up the palmetto trees in the ballpark.
Yeah. Do you ever take them down to the river and let them run around back there, or no?
No.
Too much
I've got
clean?
A golden doodle, dude. Like that. My dog, my dog's like, she's a little bit on the high maintenance side. Like I can't be running through, like this isn't a blue tick hound we're talking about. You're running on the river in the mud. This is a golden doodle, man. You know what I mean?
Well, you got girls at home. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I do. Like I'm walking around and like I've got a King Charles Spaniel and a Golden Doodle. Like how, like,
hey,
we were that need hairdressers, right? I mean,
we were at the beach last week. We went down to Edisto and we were listening to y'all on Sunday. Or not Sunday, Saturday.
James Madison.
No, the week before that, in the tournament. It was LSU, and we were at the beach, and Ryan Brewer, and Brewer and his family come walking down. They've got 2 Great Danes.
Oh wow!
And they're huge, Monty.
Yeah.
They're enormous, and his daughters are walking them down the beach, and Ryan's daughters are the sweetest girls. They're both in high school. They're beautiful. They're big time soccer players. But I saw one down. I said, "Are they walking you or are you walking them?" They couldn't get 10 feet without the next person wanting to stop and pet the dogs. I mean, these things are huge.
Yeah.
So at least you're not walking 2 Great Danes around, I guess.
No.
If that makes it any better. I don't know.
I don't think I can afford to feed a Great Dane.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I asked Brewer. He said he literally takes a trailer on the back of his truck to pick up pallets of dog food at a time. I've never heard that in my life. I said, you're like Cousin Eddie, except you don't own an RV. All right. So what I want to ask you about Dalton Reeves, Monty. I mean, dude, come on. Right. I mean, no disrespect at all. I mean, but you play at Erskine and then you go to PC and then this cat, from what I understand, I've never met him before, but I understand he is just an amazing kid. And he steps right into the lineup, hits a couple balls out of the yard against the Blue Hose, his former team, and pretty much from there never leaves. What were y'all working through to get him to the point where you felt comfortable about putting him in the lineup?
Well, Dalton actually showed us flashes like in the fall. Look, there's always an adjustment. When you go from a Presbyterian to a South Carolina, or you go from high school or junior college, like when you come into a program and you're facing SEC caliber arms kind of day in and day out, there's always going to be an adjustment phase. And I think Dalton showed signs that like this guy's got a chance to hit a little bit. He's played a lot of baseball. He was a really good player at Erskine, went to Presbyterian, was a really good player there. And, when we got him, we felt like this guy could be a great number 2 option behind Cole. When we need to give Cole a breather, we can catch Dalton. But we also happen to have a really talented freshman catcher in Ryan Bakes who, tore the cover off the ball in the fall. And we felt very good about Bakes as well. So, it's just interesting. Like we played Presbyterian in the middle of the week and decided to give Dalton a start. And he hit 2 home runs in that game. And then from that point on, he pretty much did not come out of the lineup and had a tremendous year. I mean, I'm looking at our stats right now. Dalton Reeves had 119 at bats and hit 11 homers. I mean, if he got 220 at bats, who knows? He would have at least hit 17, 18 home runs this year. And I'll tell you what I think about Dalton Reeves and why Dalton Reeves had such a good year for us and maximize like his role and what he could do at a place like South Carolina, because the kid grew up a diehard South Carolina Gamecock fan. And this was like a dream come true for him to be able, to get the opportunity to play out of South Carolina. And I just think that when you get the opportunity to sign a kid or bring in a kid that's a good player, that this is their dream school, they tend to overachieve. And I think Dalton overachieved because of the opportunity that he was given at South Carolina. We're very close, and, there's a big time connection there. Dalton's dad and I grew up together. So his dad went to Lugoff Elgin High School, Will, and we lived in the same neighborhood growing up. So Will's mother, Trudy, who was a school teacher, actually did all my algebra tutoring when I was in high school. So I've known Will Reeves, Dalton's dad, and Will had a brother, Jay, who drove the Little Debbie truck in Lugoff, who pitched at Presbyterian for Tim Corbin. When Tim Corbin was the head baseball coach at Presbyterian, Jay, passed away a number of years ago, but this was a huge baseball family. And so when the opportunity came to recruit, we needed another catcher, and I knew Dalton was out there and looking for, that 1 year left. We jumped on it, and I'm just so proud of him and happy for him that that he had such a major impact on this program and this season and this year.
Oh man, wow. I mean, he had some incredible at bats. I mean, that grand slam, people are going to remember that for a long time. Certainly he will. And then, kind of in that same camp is Brenling. I mean, this kid really hit the baseball well down at North Florida. I know y'all played against him last year. And good player. You bring him in, and then he comes in and solidifies the leadoff role. And but so again, that process kind of, can you walk us through? I don't want to say why it took so long, because some guys just click at certain times. But what were you working through? Yeah, what were you working through?
So, Austin came in, like we, recruited Austin. He played against us, hit 380 at North Florida with north of a 500 on base percentage, played center field and was a leadoff hitter. And we felt like we need a real leadoff hitter. This guy's a good little player. Let's get him. The thing that I liked about Austin was Austin started out at Florida and didn't make it, and then had to go JUCO, and then had to go North Florida, and now he's here. Very similar to Dalton Reeves and Blake Jackson. If you look at those guys, it took them the process of getting them to South Carolina. Like, they had to grind. Like, those guys had to grind to get here. And Brenling just felt like was a blue-collar, hard-nosed, toughness over talent guy that had a knack of getting on base. Well, he comes in the fall, and, he's not the fastest kid. He doesn't throw the best. He's undersized. And he didn't have a great fall for us. He started to show signs in the preseason, though. Like, when we came back, like, this guy started squaring balls up. We continued to work on some things with him on the swing and this, that, and the other. But I think that, he just got kind of, lost in the shuffle a little bit, when guys like Dylan Brewer in the preseason had, was swinging the bat really well, playing great defensively. Felt like, Dylan had earned the opportunity to start. And Dylan got off to such a great start. So, and when we started to make, some adjustments to the lineup, it's funny. It's really funny how it happened with Austin Brenling. We were having live at bats. Like, we were throwing guys that hadn't been getting into games, doing some live at bats on the field, and Brenling rolls out there and the week of Arkansas and goes 5 for 6 in live at bats. And we were like, and King asked me, he's like, hey, do you think it's crazy that we just started him? He had 1 at bat on the season at that point. Yeah. And I said, dude, this guy has always gotten on base. This guy has always hit. Like, let's play him. Like, what do we have to lose right now? Play the guy. And the rest is history. I mean, he wound up getting 99 at bats, hit 303, with a 413 on base. I mean, he was good. He was really good for us. And Blake Jackson, same thing. The guy was, in and out of the lineup a little bit, but at the end of the day, hits 290 with a 465 on base percentage and stole 16 bags. And Blake Jackson's a guy that starts out at a 4-year school, has to go to a JUCO, goes to another 4-year school, winds up here. They're just tremendous stories. Those 3 guys are tremendous stories, and in what you can do if you go out there and you get kids who are tough, that have some ability, but can better baseball players. And all 3 of those guys made just positive impacts on the team this year.
I know. I'm so sad that Brenling is out of eligibility, but Blake Jackson is not. And I just listening to you, it sounds like Blake Jackson plans to return to South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I hope it stays that way, because I think this kid's got a chance. Also, unfortunately, with the successes of some players, some guys are still in search of more of that. Talmadge had a tough year at the plate. And Will Tippett, a kid that coming into the season, I was talking to Whittle one day. He said, dude, Tippett has just torn the cover off the ball.
Yeah.
And came up big in that regional, there's no doubt. But and had some big moments later in the year, but it took him a while to get there. So when you look back and you review the years that these young men have, they're still a part of the future of Gamecock baseball. What is it that they need to do to make themselves better players?
Well, I think Talmadge and I are on the same page. I mean, I've worked a ton. I probably worked with Talmadge more than any player on this roster. I love Talmadge Lee Croy to death. And I felt for Talmadge, this year. Talmadge struggled and at times, and with the way social media is now, like, can you imagine what it's like to be a kid like Talmadge Lee Croy, and just some of the beatings that people put on him on social media? I just can't imagine what that's like, trying to play in the SEC, and then you have to deal with that too. And I'm obviously going to defend the player because I love him to death. But Talmadge, I think, would be the first one to tell you that, he was constantly trying to make some adjustments throughout the course of the year, trying to find it. And just sometimes, it just doesn't work. I mean, baseball is one of those sports that just sometimes it just doesn't work. Now, I will tell you this. I felt like Talmadge at the end of the year, we kind of found something, just in the cages one day, we kind of found something that we felt like freed him up, and it was more on him. It wasn't on me. It was more on him. Like he said, look, I feel comfortable standing here. I feel comfortable doing this. And we kind of ran with a couple things, and I felt like he swung the bat pretty dang good in the postseason, in the regional, and started to build some confidence. So I think that's something that we can carry over into next year. It's just we know what works for Talmadge. Let's stick with it. Let's not alter it. Let's not change it. And, and we feel like Talmadge has a chance to come back and have a really big year next year because he's played a lot for us. I mean, it's another guy that's just played a ton of baseball. And we all know it's a grown man league, man. Like you look at the teams in our league, there's very few like young guys that just step in and play. If you got those older veterans that have played a good bit, that's going to help your team. Tippett, Will had such a good fall. But he scuffled left-handed again. And I think we kind of identified that, you're a better hitter right-handed. Let's make the switch and just hit right-handed. And we started doing that there in the middle of the year and saw some success starting to come. And then unfortunately, Tip had the injury at Arkansas where he got, had the concussion and injured his knee. And that really set him back. He just was unable to, to play through that and work through that and continue to develop. But then you started to see it again there at the end of the year as he started to accumulate at bats and get a little more comfortable just hitting right-handed. He does have some power. There's some power in that right-handed swing. And I do think that if Will gets a full year where he just hits right-handed and just focuses on one side of the plate, because it's two swings being a switch hitter, I think he has a chance to be a much better offensive player, going into year 3.
And that brings me to Ethan. We talked to Coach King. I don't know, Monty, probably a couple of months ago. It was, I think it was right around the middle of the year, and he had just kind of gone through a little bit of a slump. I mean, we go back and look at the numbers. Nobody's going to remember game to game, but they will see 306, 21, and 53. That's a pretty good year. But when you compare it to freshman year, you're like, okay, so maybe some struggles here and there. And King mentioned, he said, hey, look, you're a sophomore now, and when you're a sophomore in this league, and that you get circled, and they start to pitch you different, and they start to make their adjustments, it's up to you to make your adjustments, and then it becomes a game from there, right? And so kind of walk us through what you saw out of Ethan this year, who had some special moments, certainly had some frustrating moments, had the injury late, and he played through it this weekend with the fracture. Tell us about him as a kid and what you saw out of him in his sophomore year.
Well, I think, one of the things that, I was able to experience earlier on was having Seth Beer, who had such a tremendous freshman year, and then you come out as a sophomore and, all of a sudden you have that target on your back. And I think the same thing kind of happened with Ethan a little bit. Like, can you imagine, like Ethan Petrie going into his freshman year, he just wanted to make the travel roster.
Yeah.
Like this guy just wanted to make the travel roster based on how he had hit in the fall and in the preseason. So like all of a sudden, when you start having that level of success, it's like, oh my God, like I'm an All-American. I'm one of the best freshmen in the country. And now I come back as a sophomore. It's a much different mindset going into year 2 when it's like I'm expected to be freshman Ethan Petrie in my sophomore year and my junior year. And that's like the expectation of me now. That's a lot of pressure to put on a young man. And I think he navigated it, really well. We certainly talk about it a good bit and tried to help him through it. But, I look at Ethan and I say to myself, like, this guy outside of Messina, was second on the team in runs scored. He had a 471 on base percentage, which was the highest on the team for an everyday player. I think Ethan would tell you like he wanted to probably drive in more runs with, hitting with runners in scoring position. And I think that's a big cat and mouse game for Ethan. It's just like understanding what I do well and what I want to hit, but also what I'm going to get. And that's a big part of this, from the hitting standpoint is, as he continues to develop, can Ethan start to adjust a little bit more to how they're pitching him versus what he wants to hit. And I think sometimes, he just tried too hard. I think a lot of this in this game, it's like when you start getting labeled, well, we need to hit better with runners in scoring position. Well, if you constantly talk about that with your team, then what do you think the mindset is when they get in those situations? They press, versus like just work on it and then just let them play, to where it's not a pressure situation for them. It's more of like, we work on this all the time. I feel very comfortable in this situation, and I'm just going to play. And I think Ethan probably put a little bit too much pressure on himself, but at the end of the day, he still had a phenomenal year. He's a phenomenal player and a phenomenal kid, and look forward to continuing to see what he is able to accomplish and what's going to be a historic career at South Carolina. When it's all said and done for Ethan Petrie, boys, like, he's going to be right up there with some of the best that have ever played here, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he might be above one name we know well.
He's
I give him hell about it often, but Smoke says all the time, Monty, he's like, I hope he breaks the record. Sure. If he breaks my home run record, how Justin is. I mean, he comes across funny, but he pulls for every one of these guys as much as anybody does, and he wants to see him break it. I think he's going to break it as long as he stays healthy, and that's going to be quite the moment when he does. Right now, he's tied with Landon, if I'm not mistaken, on the home run chase. All right, as far as the staff goes, it's hard to imagine 37 wins this year without a couple of guys that you recruited and signed out of the portal, Monty. Ty Good and Garrett Gainey really gave this team and this program every ounce of everything they had this year in multiple roles. What did those two guys
really did. Well, I think one of the things that we knew going into this year, coming out of last year, is I don't think we returned but about 70 innings, from last year's pitching staff. So we needed guys to be able to step up that were in the program, and we needed to bring in some guys that we felt like could pitch for us. And those two guys just did a phenomenal job. But we also, I think one of the things that does stand out to me is we got a decent amount of mileage out of our freshmen. Like, our freshman arms were able to get a lot of experience this year that they just simply would not have gotten if they were on last year's pitching staff. And you look at like the progression of Parker Marlott. Parker Marlott's able to throw 20 plus innings as a true freshman, and to do what he did against Kentucky in the SEC tournament, that's only going to help that kid moving forward. Tyler Pitzer, Eddie Copper will be back next year. So you look at those guys, and Jake McCoy. Jake McCoy, was a kid that was hurt in the fall, was hurt in the preseason, like coming back from an injury. We didn't even get a chance to pitch Jake, really till about the halfway point of the season. So he was able to get in there and throw some meaningful innings. So I do think that, those guys, along with Gainey and Good, we're able to get out there and develop, and it's only going to bode well for the future for us. And Dylan Eskew too. Dylan Eskew, this is a guy that, threw 7 innings on the previous year's team, and this guy made 15 starts for us and threw 62 innings. So I do think we have a good nucleus of pitching coming back, much more experience coming into next year with, by the way, an Eli Jerzenbeck, who we did not have last year. Eli Jerzenbeck has as good a stuff as anybody in the country. He has Friday night caliber stuff. So, with Jerzenbeck, coming back next year, we feel like we have a chance to really do some good things on the pitching side.
Do you mind clarifying that a little bit? I think a lot of folks maybe thought that Jerzenbeck was going to just move on to pro ball. Do you feel like he's going to return at this point in time?
Well, we do, but look, there's no guarantee now. I mean, as far as the draft goes, as far as the draft goes, there's no guarantee. We don't know what any Major League Baseball team would be willing to do when it comes to Jerzenbeck. But I think his price tag is going to be very, very high. And, I do think that, we have a chance to get him back. And if we do get him back, and I feel comfortable that the chances are better that we get him back than we lose him. But again, you never know. If we get him back, you got a true, Friday night caliber guy.
You might have a couple of them because I think it's hard to imagine guys like Jake McCoy not competing for that job as well. And And I'll tell you too, I just feel like I'm not doing my job if I don't mention Matthew Becker. I really love watching this kid compete, and I know he's had some tough moments from time to time. But you talk about Gamecocks through and through. You mentioned that about Dalton, Matthew Becker, Evan Stone. These guys, they bleed it, Monty, and Matthew Becker's thrown some big innings in his career, and I'm excited to see his future.
Well, I mean, Becker, threw 43 innings for us this year with 60 strikeouts. I know he was up and down, but he had some really big moments for us, and you're exactly right. Another guy that took a big step for us this year too was Connor McCreary.
Yeah.
Didn't pitch very much as a freshman, and he's got an electric arm. He's a guy that pro teams are going to look at this year. He's draft eligible, so never know what's going to happen there. But Roman Kimball, has made a tremendous. He's made 8 starts for us this year, so he's going to be, hopefully back. We'll see. Again, just don't know with the draft. But if he's back, he does have some experience, and these guys are all going to be a year older and hopefully a year better. And who knows with Eli Jones? I think somebody will take Eli Jones, but we have a chance with the freshmen and some of the guys that we have coming back to have a really good pitching staff, and we have a really good group of arms coming in for next year.
Well, man, it's clearly everybody wishes that you couldn't do this right now. We all wish you're out there practicing and getting ready to play in Athens this weekend, I guess is how it would be, as much as that place sucks. But you didn't say that. I did. I still remember the frat boys down the right field line yelling at Harley Lale about his girlfriend, Sarah Francis, at the time, and I thought his head was going to fall off his shoulders.
Well, Harley Lale's head about exploded on a regular basis.
I could tell Harley's stories until probably till my head fell off my shoulders, but I'll never forget. I hate those sons of bitches. I said, well, Harley, they're gonna do it. You just can't listen to them, man. So moving forward as the interim head coach, if you don't mind, what will you be doing until all this stuff gets kind of organized up there?
Well, Coach Tanner basically told me, look, you're the interim head coach, and the main responsibilities right now are just having the exit meetings with the players, but also continuing to communicate with players that are hitting the transfer portal and trying to recruit them to come to South Carolina. So, and that's what we've been doing. Whatever Ray Tanner asked me to do is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it to the very best of my ability. And, Coach Holcomb and Coach Williams are both in the office today. We're working as hard as we can to recruit players and try to set up visits for kids to come in and take a look at South Carolina. And we're gonna continue to push forward, until we know otherwise, and that's just how we're gonna do this thing. And that's our responsibility, and that's what we're gonna do.
Well, man, can't thank you enough for all your time. I don't think we set a time limit, and if we did, we blew through that. So I really appreciate you, jumping in to kind of recap everything that happened this year. Again, I know it didn't end in Omaha the way y'all wanted it to, but getting that back to the postseason is always a good thing, with a chance to win and try to do it again next year. We'll get you back here soon. I know you'll be busy and hot here in Columbia. It's June, so it's time to get warm. Maybe you go down there and evaluate some prospects with JC. I know they've got camp going on for Carolina football. You've got a football eye. You could help those guys figure it out.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, I have plenty of experience doing that.
Yeah.
I bet we could probably do some good.
I think it'd be fun.
Back secondary receiver.
Yeah. Did you play football at Lugoff?
I did.
What position?
I did.
Well, there you go.
I was a running back and middle linebacker, man. Played both sides of the ball.
That's where the tough
Iron Man.
You know exactly what you're looking like.
Hey, we were 1-10. We were 1-10 my last year. We beat Clover 21-20, and they were 0-11.
Oh,
So I took a beating.
There's that one win, man.
I took a beating as a football player.
Wow.
Those are
it
good
all
life
worked out.
That's awesome.
You became the first draft pick in the history of the College of Charleston's baseball program. I'd say things worked out all right for you, and here you are today. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate all the time, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on.